third and final episode in an Oscars trilogy of the Long Take podcast, which has very quickly gone from this is not a podcast to it is now a podcast. And there are 3 episodes somehow. We started with a discussion of the above the line categories with Antonio. So the major kind of most talked about categories. And then I just earlier today finished recording with my friend Greg Cass. We talked about the features and the shorts. And now I am here with another dear friend and colleague, PT McNiff, to dissect the below the line categories. Hi, PT. How are you doing? Are you ready to get crafty?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to get crafty. I'm very excited at the way that you have framed this because everyone knows the third in a trilogy is the bloated, disappointing chapter. So I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
See, I was going to say we get to be the Return of the King that actually wins the Oscar.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fair. We're
right?
the culmination of the of the whole endeavor. So good. I'll take that instead.
Nice. So I should pause to explain for the listeners who maybe aren't steeped in Oscarology that when we say above the line and below the line, generally that refers to people who are either in front of the camera operating that they're in charge. Some people are the categories people care about and the categories people don't care about. That's not what we're doing here.
The one with
we don't subscribe to that. Yeah. Whereas the below the line categories are more crafts, categories where the folks are behind the camera, behind the scenes, typically, and not high profile like some of the nominees for the above the line categories. So that's just kind of a quick explanation for what we mean when we say those things. So we're going to be talking about production design, visual effects, costume design, makeup and hairstyling, cinematography, editing, sound, and just throwing in for good measure, original song. That's not exactly a craft category. But it's a fun one.
I appreciate you divided the music up between Greg and me in order to...
Yeah, Greg got score, you're getting song. I didn't see a better way to kind of evenly distribute it, so here we are. Are you ready to get started?
I am. I was going to note just a couple of meta things before we dive into the categories. I don't know if that's something you're interested in. You could just tell me to stop, I guess.
Always. Go ahead.
Right. So, I mean, in general, I want to say I like the Oscars as a framework to talk about movies. Antonio sort of said something like this too, where it gets you to watch movies that maybe you wouldn't have seen otherwise. It also is, this fun kind of meta gaming of utilizing game theory to try to see how are all these pieces going to fit together. I very much ascribe or subscribe to your theory of kind of we spread the Academy wants to spread the wealth. And in this era when they're really trying to expand the Academy, it's where is that expanded population that attempts to at least increase diversity and international representation? Where is that going to appear in these votes? So to me, I feel like looking at the craft categories, there's sort of 2 not competing narratives, but intersecting narratives. One is the sort of big one that I know you've already talked about in the earlier installments of this trilogy, which is the Everything Everywhere All at Once momentum train, every award, every category in linear succession, which is potentially what it might feel like. And it's picking up momentum. Could it start to sweep up in its tail some of these awards that it's nominated for down here? But it isn't the movie that is leading the charge in craft nominations this year. There are 2 movies that have 6 across the 8 categories that we're talking about. I'm sorry, 9. I did include, when I was thinking about this, I included score. So I'm poaching from Greg slightly. But All Quiet on the Western Front and Elvis both have 6. And they're sort of competing back and forth for where are they going to get their recognition. And also it's are either of those movies going to get their own little sense of sort of almost not backlash necessarily, but anti-hero momentum in the narrative for people who are I don't know if I want to vote for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Insane people who are very have bad taste, in my opinion. But are they gonna flock to one of these movies, and are one of them gonna get a little bit of steam going through these categories? So Yeah, that was mainly it in terms of like what I was sort of looking at, thinking about when dealing with this. And there was some degree of trying to psychoanalyze like what voters might think, what do new voters think, and then what are the sort of crusty old, like mostly white, mostly dudes, mostly older voters, like how stodgy are they? How resistant are they to being told what to like? And are they going to backlash against some of these things? But I don't know if I can do that. So instead, I looked at the odds websites and mostly just followed what they said.
The weird thing about this season has been that everyone keeps saying, don't forget that group of voters, the backlash voters. I think when I was talking to Antonio, I called them the Green Book voters, people who are like, don't tell me what to like. I want this other thing, right? I feel like at every turn, everything everywhere has just proven that wrong, that either those people aren't voting this year in their guilds and the precursors, or there aren't enough of them to make a difference or something like that, because it keeps winning.
Right. Or they like Everything Everywhere All at Once, even though it's not a movie about them. They're just like, yeah, this is great.
And right. They appreciate what it's doing, even if they personally don't like it or something like that. Right. They appreciate what it means for the industry or for something, or for movie going in general or something like that. Because it has the rare thing of being like an indie film in its formation, but then also like a big blockbuster in how it did at the box office and sort of the genre that it's sort of playing with and stuff like that. So yeah, really interesting year. But I also agree with you that when I was doing this set of categories in particular, the breakdown was kind of surprising in terms of like, whoa, like there's certain movies that we're going to talk about that I'm like, why are they winning so much? Yeah. I would not have expected that. And yet when you add them up, it becomes complicated. So, you want to just get into it? Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right. So we're going to start with production design. The nominees, All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of Water, Babylon, Elvis, and The Fabelmans. So let's start with, what do you think will win here?
For will win, I think it's going to be Babylon, which I think this is going to be where it gets its recognition. All of the sets, and especially when it's like on the movie sets, like within the movies, and the huge party that is the whole, I don't want to say the whole first act, but certainly the whole first sequence, is just, it's incredible. There's all these things going, it's very flashy. And this is, this is a year, where there's a lot of flash, in these movies. And, I think that Babylon underperformed, certainly in the box office. Also, I think in terms of numbers of nominations. But I do think there's enough kind of energy where they're like, well, we want to like acknowledge it. And so this is, the place for it. I had for should win, and maybe this was like a little bit of a reach, but I said Avatar: The Way of Water. I'm going to be honest that I'm not 100% certain where production design ends and where visual effects begins for a movie like this. But the first Avatar did win production design, or I think it was art direction still, back in 2009.
Oh, I didn't remember that. That's really interesting.
So it feels like, as impressive as it was for Babylon to recreate like the past, the level of degree of detail and sort of different scenes in Pandora, the fantasy world, the spaceship, and everything, deserves just as much recognition. That's also maybe because I wouldn't feel like I need to reward Babylon. No disrespect. I enjoyed part of it, but like it was fine. I don't think it needs to win, and I would almost rather Avatar just gets another Oscar. Asterisk, will come back to its guaranteed win.
So the predominant commentary I've heard against Avatar having a shot here is that most Academy voters will assume that because it's animated, right? Sort of like they'll put it in another category that we're about to talk about.
Yes. Well, yeah. And I don't think it has a shot at winning. I think, if there's going to be, if there's going to be another movie to take it, it's one of our two. This is going to be a recurring thread from me. It's Elvis or All Quiet on the Western Front are always lurking whenever they're nominated to maybe snatch up one of these awards. Yeah. I think All Quiet is probably like the most likely challenger for this, just because that's got, I think, a little bit more momentum. Although we can talk about this. This is another one of these little like weird trivia tidbits that I found out. There have only been 4 Oscars won by Baz Luhrmann movies, and they've all been won by the same person, and it's his wife,
Catherine Martin, right?
Right, who does production design, and she does costumes. And I shouldn't say just her, because she has partners, I think, in both of those, but she has won each of the Oscars that has been awarded, and we'll get to whether I think she has a chance in costume design. But I mean, she is a 2-time winner. Is there a degree of like, yeah, Catherine Martin, yeah, Elvis, like, oh, look at all the, look at all the Elvis-y things. They made all this in Australia. Like they made, Memphis and Las Vegas in Australia. That's, that is impressive. So I do think those have way better chances than Avatar. That's just what I would vote for. I would vote for Way of Water. How about you?
Yeah, so I think the main thing going for Elvis that I've heard is that everything is built.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're looking at that from a production, like oftentimes, whether or not it's good or bad that this happens is debatable. But oftentimes with these categories, it's more like there's more, if you do more production design, it's more extra, right? If it's really flashy, like you're saying, and noticeable, then it tends to have an edge. But I think the story that because they shot Elvis during COVID and therefore had to not really film that much on location and just sort of built everything that's in there, everything's a recreation on set, that a lot of people, if they know that they'll be really impressed by it and therefore vote for it. I actually still have Babylon as my will win as well. But I only recently changed that because I originally was like, well, Babylon couldn't even get into Best Picture. So like, what are we doing here? But then every single Oscars pundit I've listened to recently has been like, it's Babylon. And I think that might be partially because it's won some precursors.
It won the Art Directors Guild Award. I know that. Yeah. It might have won some of the like other ones around there, but that, to your point of people might be like, oh, Elvis is impressive. It's like the people in the field chose Babylon. And, is there, again, this is, I don't know. It's somewhat a black box, or maybe it's just, I don't dig into it enough. But, my thinking would kind of be like, I guess they know what they're talking about. So, okay. So I think that may be part of why Babylon still has this.
And the other thing I've heard a lot too is that even if you don't like Babylon as a film, you can still recognize that the production design is really elaborate and impressive, and sort of like is the movie.
Yeah. Now, do we have room? I should have asked this before we started recording. Do we have room for the like movies we wished were nominated?
Sure, you can throw that in.
So mine is, which I did put in my draft of my long take, is 3,000 Years of Longing, which is the George Miller movie about a djinn and an academic, and sort of the like fairy tales and stories that are told. And I thought it was beautiful. I love that movie. I'm like the only person in the world, I think, who loved it. But I thought it was great, and I would have loved for that to be nominated here. I don't know what I would have pushed out necessarily. Sadly, probably The Fabelmans, but which I only recently watched.
Yeah, that's the one I don't really understand why it's in here.
I feel like it's just Rick Carter. Like people are like, yeah, Rick Carter, like that guy's good.
Yeah.
And he gets the sort of, people like him. So he's done a lot of work. He's done great work. So I don't know. I would have put that. That movie kind of came and went, but I
never actually managed to see that, so that makes me want to see it more.
Catch
up on it.
There is inherently something to unpack and think about of an older Australian man and his daughter writing a movie about a Middle Eastern folk tale or real folklore creature. That is not ignored in the movie to a degree, because like Tilda Swinton,
but it's still there.
But it's definitely still there. And so, that I think that's, if there's anyone who watched it or didn't watch it, or you watched it and reacted poorly to that, or didn't watch it because of it, I would fully understand and endorse that. But if you're also a white guy like me and you can get over that hump, even if you're not, I think there's a lot there. I think it's great.
My should win is actually All Quiet on the Western Front, which is somewhat surprising because I'm putting it in my predictions as a like despite what I think. But this one is the one that I'm actually on board with, because to me, the best part about that movie, which in a lot of ways, like, is very impressive, especially technically, doesn't do a ton of things that's new. I think you texted me like, yeah, war's bad when you watched it, right?
Seems confirmed.
Right. So yeah, that's why it's not like, overall, it's not really kind of at the top of my list. But for me, the best, most impressive part, and what the most distinctive part of the film was how it was showing the class difference between the way that the officers that were, or the political figures who were sort of orchestrating and negotiating the war were living, versus how the soldiers in the trenches and kind of like wandering through these deserted houses, and sort of the stark contrast visually between those two. That I thought was like the most interesting part for me of the film. And I feel like the production design really is what's accomplishing that. And just like, creating the mood that they need to kind of like create that. Cause they, no one at any point has a monologue that's like, we're out here in the trenches while you're getting fat on, your dinner at the fancy banquet table, but like they're showing it. So that's kind of how I landed on my should win.
I totally get that, and I wouldn't be mad if it won. It's, I think everything you say is correct. I think if it didn't seem like the movie was in line to win other awards, I might have given it more consideration here than I did. And I do think it's, like I said, I think it's the second most likely. I think it's more likely to overtake Babylon than Elvis is.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now we're on to visual effects, which is a much less rich category in terms of prognostication.
I mean, who do you think will win, Jen?
I know, you're on the edge of your seat, right? We've got All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Batman, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and Top Gun: Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you have Avatar.
It was an honor just being nominated for 4 of those movies. I mean, it's the lock of all locks. It's Avatar: The Way of Water. Will win, should win. It's steamrolled through all the precursors. I mean, it's like we were just saying about production design. It's the category where if people are like, well, I don't know how to credit this movie for what's actually happening here, everyone knows it can go into visual effects, and it's now the 3rd highest grossing movie worldwide. It's, insanely successful. And whatever flaws the movie has, it's gorgeous. And it's the effects are incredible. It took another 12 years, 13 years for it to be finished. Beyond the fact that presumably every working visual effects person probably did something for it at some point. There's, I just think there's universal acclaim for
I hadn't even thought about that part. That makes a lot of sense.
Here's my one tidbit. I have 2 tidbits. My one tidbit is it got nominated 14 times at the Visual Effects Society Awards, which is the sort of craft category, craft award ceremony for this. It won 9 of the awards. The 5 that it lost to itself. It was 5 different times that it was nominated in the same category as another aspect of the movie. Amazing. So it swept every feature film thing. And the only losers were, lost to another faction here.
Yeah. I feel like, the one thing this film is universally is undeniable as the technical achievement. And it also has the narrative of sort of how long James Cameron was working on this, right? And how this is kind of like advancing the technology and making this look as good as it can, and innovating in that front seems to be his kind of like career white whale that he's like constantly obsessing over, right? I feel like that's the story we hear about him and the making of this movie. And so, I think, this is a slam dunk. Can I tell you about my journey with Avatar: The Way of Water?
Please.
So I actually only just saw this movie this past weekend.
Okay.
In a theater, because that's the only way you can see it now, which makes a lot of sense. And I had dragged my feet to see it even after it got nominated for Best Picture. Not because I hated the original one or anything like that, Though I feel like the farther out I got from watching it, right, it's been a long time, the less compelling it seemed, and the more basic the story seemed, and kind of was like, what was really, other than it looking nice, like what was really the big deal about this? So I was sort of like not that enthused to see it. And then I saw it, and it totally blew me away. I still think the story is like very, very simple. And there's some choices that are very questionable, like, you know, which I can't really talk about without spoiling it, probably.
The white kid with
certain storylines and threads that worked for me, others that definitely did not. However, just like you were saying, the world building and how they managed to sort of up the ante, where they were like, because I think when I was watching this, the first act, I largely could have done without, or it could have been like a 10-minute kind of like prologue of how they got to the water. But once they were in the water, I was all in. I was like, this is amazing. I'm loving all the creature designs. I love the sort of like the sci-fi rules about like how they're breathing under the water, and like just like, you know, all the things that the characters have to learn sort of when they get to this new world. And, you know, I'm here all day for lobster whales. Like, they're amazing. I wanted a whole spin-off movie of just about the whales.
Disney Plus 2023.
Yeah, let's do it. Now I understand why there's a theme park that they're building, right? It suddenly made sense, and I felt kind of foolish for like having dragged my feet. The other thing too, I was like, I know what this is going to be. That was kind of my impression. So I was like, I don't really need to see it right now because I know what it is. But then I didn't, and I felt silly being like, why did I bet against Big Jim, as they call him on the picture?
I mean, yeah, it's true. There is some degree that maybe it's sort of cotton candy, where you're just like, why am I not doing this all the time? And then it's done, and it's just like, it's gossamer, it's disappeared. But it's just such a fun time, and it's, you know, there's that Scorsese knock on Marvel movies that they're not movies, they're theme park rides. Like, Avatar might be a theme park ride, but it's a real good theme park ride. Yeah. James Cameron knows how to do that. Yeah. So I get it. And as I know, I've said this to you before, one thing that I really like about the existence of Avatar in my life is it's a good piece of ballast when I, as a fellow Star Wars hyper nerd, talks to a normie about Star Wars. I have to think like, wait, how would I feel if someone talked to me like this about Avatar, where if they were getting deep in like Na'vi culture, or like the names of like tertiary characters that aren't Jake, like I would be like, yeah, I don't know, I'm out. I'm already out. So I am glad that exists. But I'm glad you finally saw it, and I'm glad that you did like it, because
the high frame rate did bother me for a while. It took me a long time to get used to it.
The thing about the high frame rate, now where this is like a tangent upon a tangent, but the thing about the high frame rate is it drops out of the high frame rate. And then it looks like something's wrong with the projector when it goes back to 24 frames per second. That was my experience with it. Kind of, if Jim Cameron, if he wants any notes, I would say maybe if only the underwater stuff was high frame rate and then everything above ground was standard, that could have been maybe something that worked. But again, third highest grossing movie of all time, so it's probably okay.
They can work on it in the next one.
I know we spent way too much time on like the easiest category, but just two quick things. One is assuming, again, assuming there isn't a massive upset, all due respect to the rest of the nominees, they all, I hope they all felt honored being nominated, but assuming there isn't a massive upset here, this will be the 6th James Cameron movie that wins a visual effects Oscar, and that will break the tie, giving him the most number of movies. His tie is with producer George Pal, who made movies in like the 50s and 60s, like Destination Moon, and some other movies that won like back then they won the visual effects awards like through the 50s.
Right, so he had a head start.
Right, and George Lucas for when movies he directed and movies he produced. So they all have 5, and this will be 6 for Mr. Cameron. And the other question, which is like zooming out to multiple years. And I don't think there's an answer for this, but the sort of thing hanging is, given that this will only win one Oscar probably, and has only been nominated for a few, is this the Two Towers effect? Is this the Academy?
Oh no!
To say, as referenced earlier, are they waiting for Avatar 3 Fire Island for like will that be if they're like, he nailed it, he did it again, 10 statues,
right, they'll wait till we're wrapping
he's king
up.
of the world again, he's king of Pandora this time, and is that it, or is it just going to be another blockbuster, some below the lines, maybe another Best Picture nomination, and that's it. But
I remember hearing that question a lot earlier in the season when this movie was more of a contender for Best Picture. Mm-hmm. When like pre-nominations, when people were like, is it going to make it in? Is it not? Are they going to wait? And now I feel like it really has kind of dwindled mm-hmm. in terms of its chances in other categories, and that this is the one place. I think this is the only place I'm predicting it to win.
Yeah, which, I mean, that does kind of sound like my very vague memory of what happened with the Two Towers is right. Like, but that's also different because it was like bam, 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 like 3 years in a row. Whereas like James Cameron
is going to be another 10 or 15 years.
Right. He's going to be, wheeled out, to present the awards in 2045 for the award. So anyway, that's my trivia tidbit.
Nice. I love it. That was really great. See, we thought this was going to be a super quick category. We really
nope. We can't wait till we get to the ones that are contentious.
Okay, so next up we have Best Costume, Babylon, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. So, what is your will win?
So my will win is Elvis. I think that is the sort of statistical front runner right now. I think it's won the most precursors, if my notes are correct. Again, there's and now Catherine Martin, I almost lost her name here, is, she is the person who wins Oscars for Baz Luhrmann movies. What a time, right? Like, it's this iconic figure. It's these iconic decades, the 50s, 60s, and 70s that she gets to work with. This is where I feel like it starts to get like Elvis got a lot of nominations. People really like Elvis. Is the question sort of hanging over is like, is Austin Butler going to win? And if you're a voter and you are like, I liked Elvis, or Elvis is did a lot of stuff, it's both. Maybe I really liked it, I'm voting for Butler, and I want to vote for something down below, or it's like I'm going somewhere else for Best Actor, but I want to make sure it gets something. I kind of feel like this is where things are going to coalesce. What do you think will win?
I also have Elvis. And I think part of it is just, again, to go back to this more, like, are you more, are you extra compared to everybody else? Martin designed more than 90 costumes from scratch for Austin Butler. So if that's getting around, people know that's an easy vote, right? But I also think that, like you're saying, originally when I was looking at this list, I went to Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris because I was like, period pieces always win, or usually win. And Jenny Bevan won, I believe was it last year for Koala, or was that the year before?
I don't have that information handy.
You don't just know that off the top of your head, PT. No. She won recently for whatever year Cruella was nominated. And so that's why I was like, I got this. Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. And then that was very early on when nominations came out. And now I'm definitely totally switched over. And because I realized, Elvis is also a period piece. It's just many periods.
Right. Cruella was last year. You're correct. Cruella was 2021.
Oh, okay. Nice. So yeah, and I correctly predicted her last year. So I was like, oh yeah, like maybe this is happening again. But yeah, I've totally switched now to Elvis. What is your should win?
For me, my should win, and this is sort of the like, I'm stuck talking about the craft categories, no disrespect to the craft categories. This is where I said should win is Everything Everywhere All at Once, for all the sort of different looks that they had over the course of the movie. And, if, again, like that was my favorite movie of last year. I know there's some degree of backlash against it. But like, this is a place where I would consider, kind of throwing it some extra votes, if I had a vote or if I had, control over all of this, to be like, yeah, no, the costume, that's another sort of aspect of this multiversal story and the way it evoked these different genres of movies sort of, in this sort of like, as soon as you saw someone, you were like, yes, I get it. We're in the Wong Kar-wai part, or we're in the sort of, the Kung Fu section. That's what I would say. How about you? What would be your should win?
My should win is Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
Because Ruth Carter is amazing and she deserves a second Oscar. When I think back to that movie, I remember so many specific costumes. Okay. And it's been a while since I watched it now. And I feel like all the funeral costumes, all white, everything was gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And all the stuff for Namor, amazing. All the stuff that Shuri wears also just very, very intricate, very varied. Like she has some sportier looks and she has some more elaborate, sort of like traditional garb. And so, yeah, so to me, I feel like that's when I think back to these movies, those are the costumes that I remember the most. I
also think that, if I, again, I said Everything Everywhere All at Once. I was strongly considering Wakanda Forever. I think that's the main challenger here. That's the one that has a shot of overtaking Elvis. The simple math is Catherine Martin has 4 Oscars. Ruth only has 1. So like, what are we doing? Like, why are we not giving Ruth Carter another Academy Award? I do think it's like this choice sort of both for my will and should is just sort of how much Wakanda Forever is faded. Like if Angela Bassett can't do the thing, I don't know if Ruth Carter can either.
I think Wakanda Forever is just not doing anything.
Yeah. It was Wakanda for like 4 months and then
and not forever.
Yeah.
I also loved the costumes. I'm with you with Everything Everywhere, especially all the Jobu Tupaki costumes are just insanely creative. But in terms of like my prognosticating brain creeps in and says like, well, but this category never rewards contemporary costumes.
Yes. No, that's true. And again, like I guess I approach should win as this is who I would vote for, not necessarily like who like I think has any shot. I don't think it has a shot. I will say this: if they give costume design early in the night and Everything Everywhere All at Once somehow does win, the route is on. Like it's like expected.
That's true.
Like that.
Yeah. At what point do you think is a red flag for a sweep? Although I don't know, I don't know the order in which they're presenting the categories this year, so that
I don't either. But yeah, I think honestly, I think anything down here in the craft category. So what would that be? I mean, costume design, and song, which we'll get to later. I think if it wins song, song usually is they want to do all the performances. That's
score also I think would be
score. Is it up for score? I forgot that. Yeah. So if I would think if it's the earliest one would probably be score, costume design, or honestly, if they assuming they do it earlier, supporting actress.
True. Yeah, that could be huge.
That's
I would assume if I were them, I would put supporting actor early in the show.
Agreed. But sometimes they end up doing both of them in the first, 5.
Oh, that's true. Usually those are done pretty quickly. So
it's usually one supporting is first, and then the other one a little bit, like not too much further in. But is there
a nominee on this list we haven't talked about? I guess we haven't talked about Babylon's costumes.
No, I mean basically, I will admit I went alphabetically when I was putting my thing together, and I wrote like a whole paragraph about like, and this is why Babylon should win because like all the stuff, and then I realized that it's the front runner for production design, and I was like, oh, everything I said about production design is also true for costumes, so I'll just move that over to production design. But it's the same idea of like classic Hollywood stuff. Like all these, so many people are there and they all look very unique. It's an understandable nomination. But
it's also really anachronistic in a way that I feel like might rub people the wrong way, including myself. I don't know. So I already made this confession once earlier today with Greg. I haven't finished watching Babylon.
I can't imagine why the first 15 minutes would turn you off.
And it wasn't really that, but it was more like, oh, I can't just like casually watch this in my house. Like I have to like, excuse me.
It's a fever dream of a movie.
Yeah, and so like I think I've gotten through. I'm just about done with the first act, and like while I've made it. Like I told Greg, I've made it through the cocaine and the bodily fluids, I think.
Okay.
And like I don't really know how I feel about the movie as a whole yet, so that's premature. My judgment on the whole film is premature, but I did feel like the flagrant disregard for and this makes me so basic. I feel like what I've learned from doing this is that I would be a pretty basic Academy voter, probably.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I feel like especially Margot Robbie's main costume that you see in all the promo materials,
mm-hmm.
I was just like, what? Why is she wearing that?
Right.
So, because it just didn't look like something. I don't know. So yeah, it's TBD. We'll see how I feel by the end of the movie, but.
Well, it's great. By the time you finish it, it will be due for a reclamation. So maybe you can be right at the forefront of trying to tamp that down if you still don't like it in, late 2024 when you're finally able to get through it. The only thing I'll say, and I think everything you're saying is fair about Babylon. I think you're right. Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, period piece. It's a movie about clothes, so that seems like it would be nominated. I would have loved for The Woman King to find a spot in here for the costumes there. That's my wish it had been nominated, but I don't have a clear sort of ouster. I think I said Mrs. Harris just because that's the movie that's only nominated here, so I assume that was last one in. But I would have liked Woman King too. That I would rather Woman King be the movie that at least got one obligatory, sort of hat tip nomination as opposed to Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. For full confession, I've seen neither of those, but I have seen enough images and trailers for The Woman King to be like, this looks amazing, and these costumes are incredible, and everyone talked about how good they are. So,
I hear you. All right, so next up is makeup and hairstyling.
Mm-hmm.
Our nominees are All Quiet on the Western Front, The Batman, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Elvis, and The Whale. So, where did you land with this one?
I did. It's interesting how I listened to your conversation with Antonio, and when you talked about Best Actor, you were talking about the connection between acting and makeup, and I ultimately did the same thing that I think both of you did, or at least one of you, and I can't remember which one. I should have taken notes, but I said The Whale will win because I want Elvis to win, and that's sort of the coin flip is between those two. After I started sort of assembling this, over the course of the last few days, I think Elvis picked up one or two more precursor wins. So now it looks like Elvis actually, it's not as much of a tie and Elvis is kind of ahead. So theoretically, maybe I should change Will Win to also be Elvis. But in the interest of calming myself, if The Whale wins instead of Elvis, or The Whale wins period, I can say, well, at least I predicted it. So that's what I have in the Battle of the Fat Suits. What did you think, Jen?
I have Elvis as my Will Win, so that should be a beacon of hope for you. I think it is because it will be paired with Austin Butler's win in Best Actor.
Okay.
So I think, as I had said with Antonio, if I switched one, I have to switch the other because I think they are going to go together. I believe I actually incorrectly cited Renee Zellweger as being in this situation because I think Judy, and I should have looked this up because I think it lost to Bombshell, but I grouped it in with the win, the makeup wins is paired with the actor's win.
Right. Academy Award winner Bombshell did in fact.
That was the only thing I won that year, I think. But yeah, the consensus across the podcasts I listen to and the pundits that I follow seems to be Elvis is looking good here. But it could very easily go to The Whale, I think.
Elvis should be the winner because it's makeup and hairstyling, and Elvis's hair is just as iconic as all the clothes and the dance moves. So that's crucial. And, it goes across multiple decades, let's not forget the hairstyle part. So that makes sense for Elvis to win.
My should win is The Batman.
I'm fine with that.
Because you know what, if we're going to be awarding heavy use of eye makeup, why not make it for The Batman? And also, again, we're looking at prosthetics. Colin Farrell looked amazing and not recognizable as Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell disappears into third place in the best actor race, disappears into third place in the fat suit race down here. It's very disappointing that Colin Farrell's criminally under recognized this year. I'm into that. For me, this was the place I believe. Actually, I guess it isn't the only place where I have Elvis in my should win teaser. But I sort of had it because it was the coin flip, and like I think I liked Elvis more than everyone else did. Like you and Antonio are both like, man. For me, Elvis was a standard Baz Luhrmann experience. The first 40 minutes are just this like head rush of great time running through like an insane thing, and then just like another 1.5 to 2 hours of slowly falling apart, which like I don't know. I don't mind that. I also kind of love Tom Hanks being a supervillain as Colonel Tom Parker, which I think a lot of people hated. Like I liked how crazy he was in that role. Not that I'm saying it's the right choice, but I think I waited long enough to see it that I'd heard so many bad things that I had a better time than I did.
You were pleasantly surprised. Yeah. And to be clear, the Baz Luhrmann factor was actually not the problem I had with the movie. I actually quite like Baz Luhrmann's other films. I feel like I'm a Moulin Rouge apologist in a lot of conversations. So that wasn't the issue for me. It was more the Tom Hanks part of it. It was the premise of framing the story around Tom Hanks's character was really the problem for me. I was like, this doesn't make sense. And I don't like what Tom Hanks is doing. It's very distracting. And like, why are we telling, it just seemed like, why are we telling Elvis's story through the perspective of someone who exploited him? And I get how, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't what I wanted. And I totally get if it worked for you or some other folks. And that's great.
It didn't incredibly work for me. Like it's in the lower third probably of the best picture nominees that I've seen at least. But yeah, I mean, I guess I also sort of bought into the idea of like, oh, right, he's an unreliable narrator who's like telling the like sort of the skewed version of the story. I watched all of John Carpenter's filmography like a year or two ago, and he did it. The first thing he did with Kurt Russell was a TV Elvis movie, like within a year and a half of Elvis dying. That is approved by the estate, very much a hagiography. Kurt Russell's amazing. Like I think if you love Austin Butler,
I can see that.
70s Kurt Russell as Elvis, also great. But you know, it was sort of just like, great. I wasn't excited for this because it's like, I just watched a movie called Elvis. Like I just saw it like a year ago. And so I actually liked that it was like, oh, it's from this like flawed, like wrong perspective. Like that seemed intentional, but certainly off-putting, and I get not liking it. And again, the Baz Luhrmann of it is partially a positive and partially a negative for me. So anyway, yeah, is there anything else to discuss here? Oh, last thing I'll say is if All Quiet wins here, there's an All Quiet run that's happening.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I have heard a lot of arguments for the mud caked on their faces and how, you know, every promotional image for the film is focusing on close-ups of their faces with the dirt all over it. So yeah, I can see it, but yeah, you're right. Like this is a bellwether for what other categories if All Quiet.
Yeah, it didn't even take the BAFTA in this, which you know it was running through the BAFTAs. So if it does somehow win, there's just a wave. That's a different wave that's happening. But yeah.
And I think if out of all the places it could pop up unexpectedly, this is probably the least likely one, I would say.
I like you giving it to the Batman. I kind of wish I gave it to the Batman now too, but I'm not going to change it.
I just want more love for the Batman. We're going to get to cinematography. I have more things to say about the Batman with cinematography, but we'll see. Which actually is next, so that's probably a good segue.
You should just jump right into it.
Oh. So the Batman, I have two should have been nominated here, which we can start with. Cinematography, ridiculously strange set of nominations, I think. Because I think going into it, everyone thought Top Gun Maverick was going to be the front runner, and then it didn't even get nominated. That makes no sense to me. That movie looks great. It's shot really well. Why is that not in here? Because it's in so many other places. And then also, Greg Fraser just won last year for Dune. He's also doing great work in The Batman. Some of the most like dramatic and beautiful shots, like where he's coming out of the fire, all the stuff from the end. It's just like there's just so much in there that's really iconic looking and just like makes it feel like a Batman story to me. That I really wish that had gotten nominated here as well. But here we are with.
Well, before we do the nominations, I want to say I had two that I also wanted nominated, although I end up only wanting to sort of replace one movie, which we'll talk about. But I had Top Gun Maverick, obviously, on the list. I respect the Batman being on it. I wanted Nope to get nominated here because I thought that movie looked beautiful. It had a cinematographer in the movie as a character. It to me, like there was things they were doing in terms of how they filmed the night scenes that were incredible and actually worked in a way that a lot of other sort of darkness scenes have been sort of falling in genre storytelling. So I would have loved Nope to get in there. I also think Nope should have gotten more recognition in general. But this is the place where, like, if it was only going to get one nomination, I would have liked it to be here.
It is really weird that Nope is not in here, but other movies that also came out early in the year are. Because I feel like people made the excuse that, it came out in the summer, everyone forgot about it. But a bunch of the major nominees in play.
Too weird. It was too weird for them. They couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out. The kids are going to love it.
So the nominees that actually did make it in, some of which are head scratchers, All Quiet on the Western Front, Bardo, which I didn't realize till just now has a longer title, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths.
Correct.
That's the first time I'm seeing that. Elvis, Empire of Light, and Tar.
Yeah.
So what's your Wilman? What was your reaction to the set of nominees, and to follow up on that, and what do you predict here?
Okay, yeah, I want to sort of build up here. So, look, it's weird, but then as I sort of sat down and was looking at it, it isn't that odd overall. When your weakest nomination is to Roger Deakins, it's like, okay, like this isn't that bad of a category.
But he's only in here because he's Roger Deakins.
Correct. And so that's why that's the movie I would for sure take out. I actually like it is very, I feel like poor Sam Mendes was just like, he watched Roma and he was like, I'm going to make a movie about when I was coming up, and I'm going to bring in a bunch of social issues, and I'm going to like do all this stuff. And then like Spielberg was like just slapped down the Fabelmans like on next to him, and it was just like, boom, I'm doing it too. I've been talking about it for 30 years. And Sam Mendes got flushed out the door. But the movie's not bad. It's sort of charming. It has some, it's easy to get really cynical about it, I guess. Like, you can be a real cynical viewer of it. And, you know, there is some big white guy writer director energy to like the struggle of this woman and this black man, that like does come up, like, you know, you kind of butt up against that. But it is gorgeous. And it's Roger Deakins. He does a great job. Congratulations on another nomination. It's easy to forget, he was the Diane Warren of cinematography.
That is true.
So long. He had 13 nominations before he finally won, but now he's won twice. So maybe it's okay if
we can pump the brakes.
And did one of those other movies we talked about earlier. And I had assumed I was going to say the same thing about Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. That movie's gorgeous. Like, I watched it. It's insane. It's an insane movie. I
haven't seen it yet.
Why would you? It's 2 hours and 45 minutes. It is impossible to find on. Now, you have to get to the O in Bardo to get it to come up on the Netflix search. It's a Netflix exclusive. And you got to get to the they're just like, forget it. No, what
is coming up if you just put Bard?
I don't know. It's probably Bardo. I think I was. I overthought, but I put BAR and thought I would get it, and I didn't. And then I put the DO back to back. So
that's strange. That should be something that's on their splash page constantly.
You'd think, but I think, you know, it's not that it's a hard watch. It's a weird watch. Mm-hmm. It basically, this is the way I described it. It's the most Fellini-esque sequences of 8.5 mixed in with the last 20 minutes of all that jazz, and then sprinkle in the Iñárritu's particular mix of like ego and pretension, and then be like, great, it's a 2-hour and 45-minute dream sequence. Nothing logical happens the entire time. Like, you have to go through the entire movie to figure out the sequence of events that actually happen. That happens in about 7 actual minutes.
You're really upselling this here.
Minutes. And like, it's kind of great, but it's also like, it's everything great and terrible about something that sounds like that. But like, you know, again, think about like what a crazy dream sequence looks like. And like, the camera's always moving around and swooping, and it will be like in a house, and in the house, like they walk through a door and it's a palace in Mexico City. And then there's like soldiers from the War of Independence, like 100 soldiers run in, and then like you pan up and someone who was in the house is in a clock tower. Like, the camera moves are insane. So I do understand why I got a nomination. I got real close to saying I'm putting this as my should win, but that's too crazy. So like, I'm just going to keep it as a nominee. Even though everyone.
But you look so gleeful as you're describing this, though. That's the thing.
It's crazy. But I also like zoned out for an hour in the middle of it because it got really boring.
This sounds like films that I had to watch in evening screenings for film classes that I took.
Yes, it is like when people like when I think about when I was a kid and I would hear about pretentious foreign movies or pretentious art movies, like, it's 100% that. It is exactly what, like, when Seinfeld would do jokes about going to see a movie with subtitles, it's a movie like this. And, you know, I kind of like that sometimes. Maybe I was just like vibing the night I saw it. But anyway, I'm not going to recommend it to anyone unless any of the things I said kind of made it sound appealing. I will also say that I was Googling it during the movie, which is bad, especially when it's a movie I'm watching for the visuals and because there's subtitles. But I was Googling during it, and apparently Iñárritu described it as his 70s concept album. Like, it's his version of like Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh.
There's 2 direct references to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, the Genesis album. So he was coming for me, like directly. So, you know, like if any of that sounds appealing, this sort of pretentious mess, it's worth watching. Otherwise, don't. That said, I'm comfortable with it having the nomination, given all of that. In terms of Tar, like, it doesn't feel like a movie where you're like, well, the cinematography, but I did see, and I couldn't remember who it was or where I saw it. I saw someone online, like a fleeting screen cap of a tweet or something, say like the number of screenshots that have been shared from Tar in the last like 4 months underscores that the cinematography's worthy, because like there's so many, like the still images from the movie are so frequently arresting that it's like, yeah. And I love Tar, so I'm glad it got a nomination here, though I don't think it will or should win. I have will win is All Quiet on the Western Front, and I have should win is Elvis. This is my main push.
Wow, you're really on the Elvis train. This is amazing.
I'll tell you why. There has only been 3 women who have ever been nominated as a cinematographer.
Oh, right,
and
yeah.
This would be the first woman to win. Again, I kind of feel like all things being like relatively equal, because it feels like it's coming down to the battle between these craft giants this year, All Quiet and Elvis. I'd rather Elvis win. Give it to Mandy Walker. Let her have this like piece of history. And I also then,
and she very recently, I want to say this past weekend, became the first female director of photography to win ASC, which is the American Society of Cinematographers, or the Guild. And for those of you who are listening at home,
it's possible that like, you know, that might be a flip, and that like that puts her in puts Elvis in the will win. But
the thing though is that it wasn't going up against All Quiet.
That's true.
So we don't yet know what happens when those two are competing against each other, which is why I have All Quiet as my will win.
Okay.
But it was at this point where I'm like, am I overestimating how well All Quiet is going to do? Am I doing this too often where I'm like, it's going to sneak in places we don't expect, and I'm doing that everywhere? So that could be a problem. I'll have to like step back after all this is done and assess how many Oscars I have All Quiet winning and whether that's reasonable.
That's fair. And I will just note, while I do have Elvis winning 2 categories. I have, again, in my should win, not in my will win, but in my should win, I have it for makeup and hairstyling, and I have it for here. That would be it. I wouldn't, like, if I was voting, I wouldn't vote for Austin Butler. Like, all due respect, like, he's great, but I would vote for Colin Farrell. So part of me should winning Elvis down here is sort of like, you get 2 awards, like, as a treat. For being, real plucky. And that's what Elvis gets. And again, like, I would like to see the history of, the woman winning. I'm a woke.
No, I like it. I can get behind that. My should win is actually Tar.
Great. I love that.
For the reason that you said, because it's not, I feel like this category historically is very biased towards sweeping landscapes and exteriors. Like, that's why I think All Quiet's going to win, because it's the film that it's the epic war film that has those, and people are going to be like, that's cinematography. But I feel like Tar was so great at establishing a sense of place and many senses of places, and it was oftentimes the breathtaking shots were interiors, where it's like the orchestra hall, her house, right, which becomes this like weird, like haunted, creepy space of her like psychological guilt. And then, even that like cinder block apartment, if we can call it apartment building.
It's actually the beginning of the dream sequence. That is the last 30 minutes of the movie. We don't know. Right. We don't know that.
Oh, you're ascribing. Yeah, that's right. You ascribe to the dream
sequence. I don't ascribe to it.
I don't know if I'm ready to say that yet, but spoilers. Just go watch Tar. It's amazing. Spoilers. But yeah, so like that's, for me, I feel like it's the type of cinematography that is as worthy as what traditionally wins here, but is not going to be recognized. So that's why I love it as the should win. And I feel like it just contributes so much to the feeling you get from the movie. The sort of like the haunting, like, to borrow Antonio's word, like the haunting nature of it. I feel like it is that because of the cinematography.
Yeah. I mean, I fully agree. I would love it if it won. I'm,
not in a million years is it going to, but I would love it.
Right. That's the beginning of the Tar run. If it wins cinematography,
right, then we know something's up.
Actress, director, picture.
I mean, it's nominated.
Anna Dobbins eats forever.
6, yeah. 6. I think it has 6 nominations.
It does. I forget what the 6th one is. But I'm sure we can find it. The problem is when you do a find on the Wikipedia page for the Oscars, it brings up all the Avatar nominations too. So I mean, this is the struggle. But yeah, I fully hear you. I'm in on that. I would strongly support Tar winning, even more than I would support Bardo winning, even though I did kind of love Bardo.
So editing is next.
Mm-hmm.
This one I feel like is interesting,
mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of torn about it, but I want to hear your let's read the nominees. So it's Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Tar, and Top Gun Maverick.
So this is the Tar nomination that we were forgetting is right here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So my first minor thought is there's a timeline. There's a multiverse where one of them is the Banshees of Inisherin multiverse and one of them is Tar, the Tar timeline. And that, like, where it's getting these awards because that's the movie that is just like picked momentum. And I would gladly live in either of those timelines. I love Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is, like, I think that is my favorite, but Banshees and Tar are 2 and 3 right behind it. So I'm glad they're nominated. They have no shot of winning. When a Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie is not frenetic enough to really be in the running for the editing award, those 2 movies are not going to get it. But I feel like to defer. What do you think should win? I don't want to always go
should win. I think Everything Everywhere All at Once should win, and I think it's going to win. But we'll get to like how I'm being torn apart by this category.
So I think I know why you're torn apart. Because I have Everything Everywhere will winning. This is the Craft win, I think, the tail does pick up, where it's like there's enough momentum for it that it gets votes here, and that also helps kind of clarify some of the other categories for people where they're like, I do really want to support this movie, but like that means I can throw another movie a bone somewhere else. So I think that it wins here, and just the idea of having to like control all the different timelines, show the cuts everywhere. Like it's a lot of times, when people, I don't want to necessarily say all Academy voters, but a lot of people think about editing, they think about the most editing, where it's like, oh, there's a lot happening. That's a flawed approach probably. But this has most editing, or a lot of editing, that is very effective in lots of different ways. So
yeah, and it's serving the story. Like it's a fundamental part of the story. So I feel like this is the one time where the more editing, because it's also so good, right? This movie falls apart if the editing doesn't work.
Yeah, totally.
Because we're jumping from place to place and time to time and all that sort of thing. So yeah, to me, I feel like it makes sense. And it's not just flashy for the sake of being flashy, right? It's flashy with purpose.
Right. And so to be clear, I have it under will win, and I will love it when it wins, or if it wins. I should win Top Gun Maverick, because to me, I'm like, well, you didn't give it cinematography. You didn't do that. So let's give it, similar to giving Avatar Way of Water production design, which will never happen. This is the sort of like, let's give it I want Top Gun to get 2 Oscars. Okay. Like, let's do that. I think that, it is sort of a replacement for cinematography, but it's like, you've got all the planes and you've got all the action and all these things. And like, it was pretty impeccable. Like no one got lost. Like good action directing is
it's so easy to follow.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be.
No. And yeah, they did a great job. And as I think you are prepared to talk about more than I am, this category and the next category are usually pretty linked. And I believe, if I'm correct, Everything Everywhere All at Once is not nominated in the next category.
Correct.
That is a potential boost to Top Gun Maverick winning both this film editing and then the next category, which is sound.
Yeah. So there's a strong statistic. I mean, I don't know what the actual percentage is or anything like that, but historically, what wins editing wins sound and vice. Like those are paired together. And I feel like I've been burned so many times where I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is the year that they split, and then I'm wrong. So that's kind of why I'm really gun shy about splitting. I
was leaning on the website Awards Watch that sort of gave a lot of overview on things. And they had the stat in the last decade, since 2013, 100% correlation between editing. And it used to be 2 sound categories, so it used to be at least one of the sounds.
Right, that's the thing that makes it more complicated. But yeah, keep going.
Well, that was, I just wanted to interject that to say, for at least the last 10 Oscars, it's done.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I feel like the comment I hear a lot is, well, the stat is going to fall eventually because we've consolidated sound editing and sound mixing into one sound category. Because what used to happen is that there were 2 opportunities for a film to be the same as sound. And now there's only one. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes more complicated. But I feel like, again, I've fallen for that before and have been burned. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. I feel like maybe Top Gun should be winning both of these categories. But then we look at editing in isolation. It doesn't totally make sense because Everything Everywhere just won ACE, which is the Guild Award for that, for editing, right? And
well,
it just makes so much sense because of the type of editing that's in it and that it's so central to the story. Everything Everywhere is going to win Best Picture, most likely, right? It's going to have a big night. So like this makes sense because oftentimes editing gets cited as the indicator or the thing that one of the major awards that you need in order to have a path to winning Best Picture.
Yeah, I will just note, I also looked at the American Cinema Editor Awards. Everything Everywhere won Best Edited Feature Comedy. Top Gun Maverick won Best Edited Feature Drama. So they both won at those awards. So we're still split. Like we're still kind of in this.
I know, but
you're right. Everything you say is right. That's
this category is stressing me out. It's like I don't know where to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, again, in the like, I think that I approach thinking about these things as just sort of like, well, this is what I'd want to vote for. And like, whereas I think you have spent more time going to like parties that have like competitions about like ballot things, which, you know, I haven't done that often. So it doesn't like, you know, I'm a little more loose and laissez-faire about like, well, I don't know what I'm choosing to actually win. So yeah, I'm more that like I would love, you know, just again working under the assumption, which hopefully is not a false one, that Everything Everywhere is going to get at least like 3 big awards: picture, director, supporting actor, maybe more. That you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine if it doesn't get editing. Whereas like 2-time Academy Award winner Top Gun Maverick, like pretty fun. Like that's a fun thing to exist.
That's the thing too, is I don't think Top Gun can go home empty-handed. Yes.
Agreed.
I just don't think that's happening. And so then the question becomes, is it going to get 1? Is it going to get these 2 and that's it? Right? Like, because these 2 categories, editing and sound, are its best chances, I think, to get something.
Yeah. And I think to merge these even further, I mean, I have Top Gun Maverick will win, should win for sound. Like that's, you know, we know that planes can go zoom. What this award
as do I.
What this award presupposes is maybe they also go vroom. And so, you know, it's you know, it's there. It's been winning the like a ton of the precursors. It's, you know, it's not the lock of visual effects for Avatar, but like you said, people don't want it to not get an award. It, you know, it made a ton of money. It made more money in America than Avatar: Way of Water did. I think it's in the top 10 worldwide, even though it's very sort of domestic heavy in the box office. It, you know, everyone ran to Tom Cruise and said, "You saved the movies." At the luncheons, and people are pumped about it. They don't want it to not win. So I think it has sound in the bag. I think that the dilemma, I was going to say your dilemma, like it's only your fault. But the dilemma that is being faced about editing are these 2, like, I feel like if Top Gun Maverick doesn't win sound, the 2 just aren't lined up. Like, you know, they're like, I don't know how much overlap there is, but like All Quiet isn't nominated in editing. But
here's the thing. There's a good shot that All Quiet can win in sound because it's a war movie.
This is true.
So planes go vroom.
Bombs go
or
boom.
Goes boom.
Yeah.
Which I'm totally stealing that from Oscars Central, which is a new Oscars podcast I just discovered. They said something similar where they're like, is it going to be the airplanes or going to be the bombs? Like which is the louder thing that people are going to pay attention to? So I feel like, and the problem is that we haven't had a war movie up in this category since it consolidated to one sound category. Because 1917, or no, like we had Hacksaw Ridge that won, I believe 1917 won, and then I think right after that maybe is when they combined them, and we haven't had any war movies in contention since then. So it's like this is untested waters for like what a movie like Top Gun, because like Top Gun to me is also like the Ford v Ferrari. Nominee, where it's like, it's the loud roaring of engines, like, you know, that's the appeal. So
back in the day, that would have been the divide.
Exactly. So like there were, you know, if we were back to 2 sound categories, one would be winning each, and we'd be fine.
Yeah, I will just say, I think that you're right, because this movie doesn't count because it barely exists, let alone like had any shot of winning. But the Tom Hanks movie Greyhound, which it was a, you know, naval battle movie, did get nominated, but like I don't think anyone thought.
Oh, right.
And you know, Sound of Metal was just the obvious winner, and so you know, it wasn't really discussed. But so that's not a real test. I
think the Sound of Metal year is where I split, and then I regretted it, I want to say.
Yeah, that's fair. That's right, because that was a very, I feel like that was a surprise when it won editing.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like,
and then everyone's like, we're never going against the stat again.
It's not called editing of metal.
And here we are, me going against the stat. Probably. I don't know.
But you're right. And this is another bellwether of, is there a real All Quiet push to, you know, is there a 15 minutes before the armistice last minute push to try to get All Quiet into a bunch of extra awards.
Wow, spoilers for real history.
Oh yeah, spoilers for Armistice Day.
I'm kidding.
It's a tangent on a tangent. I read an interesting, this is a very strange sentence to say, but an interesting Letterboxd review from Jamel Bowie, a columnist of the New York Times, that talked about why he thought All Quiet was a bad adaptation. I'm not going to get into it, but it's worth looking up if anyone wants to do that. But anyway, and it also spoils the book, and to a degree, World War One. And to another degree, World War II, or at least the lead up to World War II. So, anyway, I think that if it wins here, if it does win sound, if All Quiet beats Top Gun Maverick, which is, again, not as surefire as Avatar, but is firmly in the lead, then All Quiet is on a rampage and start to be worried about Best Picture.
Oh no. Oh, I'm not willing to go there yet.
Well, if it wins sound, if it starts to win some of these extra craft categories, if it picks up 4 or 5, I don't think it can get all 6. But if it wins like 4 or 5 of these lower awards, then I didn't hear because you just recorded it. But I'm assuming you and Greg said that All Quiet's going to win international.
We did, and we said that's the minimum, right? That's where that's what I said. I said that's where it starts. That's
the minimum,
that's where it starts, and then it's like, how much more is it going to get on top of that?
It feels like that and score are like pretty close. Like international's a done deal. Score is likely, but then if it starts creeping beyond that, if it gets 2 or 3 more than that, I'm worried. I'm just going to say I start.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to flip flop with these 2 categories a bunch and try to figure out what makes the most sense for my overall total, like for how many films, how many nominations or wins for each film, and if that makes sense. Because again, like I don't think Top Gun goes empty-handed. So if it's like this weird trail where I'm like, okay, Top Gun can't go empty-handed. It's probably going to win sound, but then that also means it has to win editing according to the stat that we're talking about. But then that doesn't make sense because Everything Everywhere is also is like the favorite in editing right now. So it's like, then I don't know how to fix it. It's broken.
How do we make it go? But wait, All Quiet can't win editing. It's not nominated in editing. Did I just miss?
Correct. But I'm just saying that, like, so yeah, then, but that's what loops me back to All Quiet and sound, because I'm like, well, if Everything Everywhere is winning editing, and it's going to split anyway, then what maybe it's Top Gun's not in it at all, and then sound, it's going to be sound for All Quiet and Everything Everywhere in editing, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do.
The only movies that could take to fill the historical requirement, or keep the pattern going, I guess I should say. I shouldn't say requirement. Is Top Gun Maverick or Elvis? Is there an Elvis push that gets
You're
Elvis?
Back on the Elvis train. I love it. Okay.
No, I don't want it. I'm off the train at these stations. However, I'm just saying those are the only 2 movies that are nominated in both.
For both, yeah.
So,
right. So if the stats holding,
if the stats holding, I feel like it's more that it pushes Maverick up in editing than it takes Maverick out in sound. Unless it's just a shattering where it wins it, like a movie nominated in both doesn't win either, and it's All Quiet in sound and Everything Everywhere in editing.
I mean, I don't really know why I'm thinking that Top Gun can't be sound and then Everything Everywhere editing. I'm just saying that, like, if we're splitting them, then it becomes a more open field.
It's because you made a promise to yourself after losing the Sound of Metal editing award, and you said,
I'm never doing this again. And here I am about to do it, probably. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Welcome to my Oscar prediction neuroses, everyone.
I mean, the important thing is we're all having fun.
Let's go to original song.
So what are the nominees, Jen?
Yes. Applause from Tell It Like a Woman, a movie no one has seen.
Everyone's favorite movie.
Except for Greg.
Oh my God.
Yes, he's amazing. Hold My Hand from Top Gun Maverick. That is Lady Gaga's song. Lift Me Up from Black Panther Wakanda Forever. That is Rihanna's song. Natu from RRR. And This Is a Life from Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's David Byrne. I believe the big name attached to that one.
And Mitski who is a rising indie rock singer-songwriter. And then
this is a blind spot for me in terms of music, so I'm just gonna go with what you're saying.
I'm probably legally blind, but I can still, like, I can't drive, but I can, go out for a walk in this area. And I've heard of Mitski, so I feel like that must be a big name if it's gotten to me.
All right, what do you got?
I mean, look, will win, should win is not to.
Yeah.
For RRR, a movie I have sadly not seen, have only hered amazing things.
This is the most egregious thing you've said on this podcast.
I agree. I'm fully with you. I have no excuse. And I would love to lie and say I'm waiting to see it on the big screen, but I'm not. I would watch it on TV. It's just that it's 3 hours. And again, I want to pay attention to it. And every time I'm alone.
It's broken up into parts, so you can parse it out. Yes. That's what I ended up doing.
I
know we're generally against that, but
no, I will do that. I will say that it's been made clear to me that's a movie I'm probably watching on my own in my house. That's not my fellow movie watcher is not particularly interested in it. No description I've given has been persuasive. So the windows of time when I have to watch the TV by myself. A 3 hour.
No, I get that.
Full attention commitment is just hasn't gone over the hump yet. But I do want to see it. The song's great. I've listened to the song. And I love, again, knowing little about it, and I should stop talking soon. I love that it is a song in the movie the characters perform and have a whole dance to. I've also not watched like the scene because I want to see it in the context of the movie. So I don't know. I just know.
Oh no, just watch it. Just watch the YouTube video. You got to do it. It's fine. You watch it like 10 times. It's fine.
I'll watch them perform it at the Oscars.
It won't dilute the experience of the whole movie. Okay. There's so much more in the movie.
Okay. Well,
you don't even understand.
It's not an end credits thing. It's part of the movie. And I love that. I prefer that to my songs. It's international. It's getting the Indian market, film community in. And, there was this like sequence of events which was mostly it just not getting any nominations anywhere else, and India foolishly, I assume foolishly, I don't know, choosing to not submit it as its movie this year, so it wasn't up for international feature. So this is the place to reward it. People liked it. It's going to make the Academy feel real good about itself for being. There's
going to be a live performance of the song during the ceremony.
Yes, I believe people are maybe more excited about the performance than they are about the high potential of it winning. But yeah, people love it. It from your reaction, it seems you also are choosing it.
Yes, this is exactly what I have. I mean, for exactly what you just said, it's everyone's going to everyone who loves this movie is going to funnel their voting energy into this one category because it's the only place they can record it. I suppose there's a universe in which we're just overestimating how many people like this movie or have seen it, but I feel like when it came out it was a pretty big deal in terms of critical attention, but also it's streaming on Netflix. If you're listening to this and you don't know what we're talking about, it's an epic action movie that is maximalist in the best way, and you really need to see it. UPT really need to see it.
I do I was just thinking how that description would not persuade Jasmine 1 inch to want to,
which is fair. I think that this is like, to me, I'm pretty confident about this. I will be upset if this doesn't win. As much as I, appreciate the artists that are also nominated, I feel like this just needs to happen. It's going to be magical, and this category has historically been plagued by end credit songs. No matter how good the actual songs are, it makes, and I'm channeling Amanda Dobbins from The Big Picture here, because she every year goes on a rant about this category and how it makes no sense. And it's like just an excuse. If we're just using an excuse to get famous musical artists at the show, why don't we just like be open about that? Right? Like, why do we, and like, shouldn't this be more about music that's actually meaningful to the story of the movie, as opposed to this arms race that movies have now with end credits songs? Because they know that if you get Lady Gaga to do your end credits song, good chance it's going to get nominated for an Oscar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what kind of driving it more than actually like how the music is serving the story, or the actual film itself at all. So that's why I love this as a win, because the dance that goes with this is just incredible. Such a high energy song. It's like a very happy, peppy song. I'm totally fine with this winning as like we couldn't not vote for this in international feature, so we're going to vote for it here. I think that's totally fine.
Yeah. And I would think that people who haven't seen the movie, who only listen to all the songs, the other songs are not like, there's no like sort of, this is an undeniable song. Like, oh my God, like the Lady Gaga song was great in the context of Top Gun Maverick. It was not a hit. It didn't, go anywhere. It's not like people are like, oh, but this song, like,
right.
Everyone loved. Same with the Rihanna song from Black Panther. So, it would feel very strange, especially because Lady Gaga just recently won for a song that was important to the thread of the movie. So, she got her Oscar. So, is it really like, we gotta have Rihanna winning an Oscar? It doesn't feel like that's going to overcome.
Who's in line to upset here? I guess I hadn't really put much thought into that.
To me, it would be On Everything Everywhere All at Once, Stampede.
That makes sense.
And then, which is also David Byrne and, for the few people that like Mitski and Sunlux, I don't know if that's like necessarily a thing, but they're like, oh yeah, that song from the movie. I love the movie. Like, I'm going to do that. I don't know this other thing. And like I think that would partially be again okay, like it's on, like and start your engines. The train's zooming. But also a presumption of everyone's voting for not to. Like I could vote for Everything song.
Yeah.
I think that's the only real like path. But I think it's not the Avatar visual effects lock, but this is pretty close to a lock.
Yeah. Do you want to share any other thoughts about any of the other nominees?
Listen, I just feel like at this point it's borderline cruel to do this to Diane Warren every year. I'm not Greg. I don't watch all the movies. Like Greg has to endure movies.
For listeners who don't even know who Diane Warren is, can you just quickly explain?
Yes, Diane Warren is a very famous, incredibly successful pop songwriter who has been nominated. Oh boy, now
I think it's like 11.
No, this is like 14 or 15.
Oh wait, really?
I mean, it's so many I don't want to count on the fly.
I'm just Googling it.
It's 14 Academy Award nominations. And starting in the 80s. And I spent a little too much time thinking about this. I'm going to try to be brief on it. But essentially, she's a pop songwriter, has written a bunch of pop songs outside of the context of movies. But there's some, like she has this sort of trajectory just within the sort of realm of the Academy that is really interesting / borderline cruel, which is, so in the 80s, she gets one nomination for a movie I like, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Starship from the movie Mannequin. Fun song. It feels like it could have won, except it was up against Dirty Dancing, and I've had the time of my life. So, bad beat, but, she lost. Then from 96 to 2001, she gets nominated 5 times across that span. And it's a bunch of, what you would think like 90s big ballads, Celine Dion, Faith Hill, Leanne Rimes. You just
described all the middle school and high school dances I've ever been to.
So when I was going through this and I was talking about it with Jasmine, my aforementioned non-RR watching life partner, I was just sort of like, yeah, she wrote all these songs that were nominated that I don't know. Because in the 90s, I was like too cool for pop songs. And so I was like, yeah, it's Because You Loved Me or How Do I Live or Music of My Heart. And she was like, oh my God, like each of them were just like middle school, high school dances for her. And, crank up the radio, the hit, pop radio, when they come on. And just like, again, a series of like, has a big song, loses to like My Heart Will Go On, or loses to the Andrew Lloyd Webber's new Evita song from the Evita movie. Just like bad beats, bad beats.
Yeah, we can't fault any of those probably.
Right. And then there's a gap, and this is what I don't understand, and this is where I didn't dig in maybe deep enough. But from 2001, there's no nominations between 2001 and 2014. Starting in 2014, some virus activates in the collective brain of the music branch of the Academy that says Diane Warren has to win an Academy Award. There's only been 1 year since 2014 that she's not nominated for an Oscar, and it's the only year that she did not write a movie that was eligible to be nominated for an Oscar. She did not write a song for a movie that could be nominated. So she's been nominated every year. Every year, it's the song that everyone's like, why is this song nominated? Oh, Diane Warren did it. And almost no one knows the movie. No one knows the song. When they hear the song, very few people like the song. And they're just sort of like, why are we doing this? And it's just this like, please end Diane Warren's pain. And can we give her an Oscar? And this year she's receiving an honorary Oscar.
Yes.
And I think there was a hope of, here, we're giving her an Oscar. Will you please stop nominating her? Make her come to the ceremony and be Susan Lucci for another year, where she's just not going to win. And the music branch was like, no, tell it like a woman. Will be an Oscar nominated movie so we can get applause in. I will say in the can we go back and change history? There's 2 times where I think we could have helped this. We
could have prevented this.
Where she could have won. Like, I think she's got a good shot. The most recent one, let's see, 2015. Which this is tough, because it's from a documentary called The Hunting Ground, which is about the very fun topic of campus rape. And apparently a bunch of the claims in the movie started to fall apart under some scrutiny, which is not to say that campus rape is not a problem. However, there were some issues with the movie, which I don't think helped the case for the one nomination it got, which was for Best Song, but was co-written by Diane Warren and a pre-Star is Born Lady Gaga. So it's like,
oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I feel like if the movie maybe was just like more of a nothing burger than what it was, it could have won, because the song that won that year was the Sam Smith Spectre song, The Writing's on the Wall, which isn't even the best song written for the opening credits of Spectre, let alone the best song of the year. Radiohead wrote a song called Spectre for the Spectre opening credits that the producers rejected. It's a much better song. So I feel like she should have won there, and her nightmare, and by extension ours, would be over. I would also contend that in 1998, she lost to When You Believe from Prince of Egypt. And I forget, is it Stephen Schwartz who wrote that? He had just won for Pocahontas.
Sounds right.
Two Oscars for Pocahontas. It's the same person who had 2 Oscars already. And she was nominated for I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, the Aerosmith song from Armageddon, which, I mean, I don't love that song, but like,
right, but that's iconic. Like people still use that song in other things now.
It's yeah. So I feel like, that's probably where we could have called this if we could time machine, change history. I think Stephen Schwartz.
Because if we had the ability to travel through time, this is what we would need to address.
Correct. Yeah. I think step 1 would be let's get Diane Warren some peace at night. Which, I mean, it's very possible Diane Warren is just like, this is really fun. I love my infamy, and
it's really her just trolling all of us.
Yeah. Or she's just like, yeah, nominate me, don't nominate me. I don't care. I'm in my mansion in Beverly Hills somewhere. But yeah, that song was nominated. I listened to it twice. I can't tell you anything about it. I will say there are, I think, a bunch of songs that could have been nominated instead. My choice that would replace, the Diane Warren song is New Body Rumba, which is the LCD Sound System song from the end of White Noise, a movie that mostly didn't work for me. But it is an end credits song, but it's also kind of a scene in the movie. It was just like super enjoyable. So I wouldn't want it to win over Not To, but I would love for that to get nominated.
Nice. Well, thank you for the definitive breakdown of Diane Warren. That was incredible. I now feel so much more informed about why we're torturing her. Love it. Okay. So I think that's us wrapping these categories up. We did it. I think we did them justice.
I think so.
We pointed to where things are sticky.
It's possible we did too much justice. This was an extensive
No, no such thing. No such thing.
Okay.
So I just want to, at the risk of making this even longer, I want to open it up. Are there bold predictions that you have outside of these categories? Any other sort of Oscar thoughts that maybe we didn't cover, but we covered a lot? So
I don't think that I can, it's been covered so well. Again, I have not been able to listen to episode 2 of the middle part of this trilogy, but I have full confidence you and Greg covered all those categories that I've thought very little about very well. So that's good. And you and Antonio, I think we shared a lot of thoughts. The thing that for some reason is sticking out in my mind, which is completely accurate, but I still found really funny, was like this idea from that episode and also from general Oscar prognostication, where it was like, well, the BAFTAs didn't award this very Irish movie, The Banshees of Inisherin. And if the British don't like the Irish, I mean, who will? And it was just sort of like, I don't know if that really, it does track because of the film industry of it all. But like, that is something that's inherently funny. When I was sort of sketching out, again, I think more about who I want to win than who I feel like, like the sort of predicting, I guess, aspect of it. But when I was sketching it out, I do still have Cate Blanchett winning because I think that's the only place that Tar can get anything.
Yeah, that's where I'm at still too.
I do think that Tar, is going to have it, which is tough because that, maybe is the performance of the year, but it's also just like, you've got to, like, again, is there some way to go back and get Michelle Yeoh a different Oscar and then take Blue Jasmine away from Cate Blanchett and give it to her in Tar? And then, what's the domino effect? That's the Joe Reed from This Had Oscar Buzz will write those sort of what if, like, domino effects of if you change this one award, what are other things that may change? That's, but I think it's, I think it's Kate. I think it's going to be Austin Butler. I wish it were Colin Farrell. We've talked about this. I wish, I don't even know if BAFTA still does it, but I know they did certainly back in the 70s. I wish that the Oscars would nominate people for their collection of work in the year. So it wasn't just in one movie. So Colin Farrell could get Banshees, After Yang, criminally under thought of, plus The Batman, plus 13 Lives, a movie that apparently the people who see it say is really good. I don't know if I believe it, but they say he's very good in it. And as the 4th best performance in a year, like, I feel like he would have a better chance of carrying it forward.
Yeah, for sure. I forgot to mention when we were talking about best actor, I forgot to mention After Yang. I think I talked about The Batman. I really like that movie, but After Yang is great too.
If I were building a ballot block from the ground up, I would consider voting for him for Best Actor in After Yang over Banshees. And I loved him in Banshees. But I wish he were still the front runner and had a chance.
Yeah, that's probably the most tragic state of the race right now, is that Colin Farrell is not even in the running for Best Actor.
Yeah. I realized I did not say this during the recording. I said it beforehand, but I have not seen The Whale. I'm reasonably confident I never will, because every year there's one movie that is either looks too depressing or I hear from too many people is not very good. That gets some nominations that I just never end up watching it. And this movie, it does both of those things. So I'm probably not going to watch it all in on Brendan Fraser as a human being winning it. So if that happens, great.
Right. It's like good for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Austin Butler was incredible. And, I would not vote for him. And I mean, it would probably be, I haven't seen Living either. My guess is I would end up really wanting Bill Nighy to win, if for a career culmination, if nothing else. And I'm sure the performance would lift it even higher. Butler's probably 4th for me, at least. But yeah, I wish Colin Farrell was in the conversation. And I'm assuming, again, just based on, sort of the dominoes falling, that I think Carrie Condon will win supporting actress because there's no other place for Banshees. And supporting actress is that one where sort of like, it's usually an island where it's like, and this movie got 1 award and it was supporting actress. And it's very strange that Banshees is now that movie when it was like the presumed frontrunner, like not long ago. And again, there's a timeline where it's having the Everything Everywhere run, and it was just like, no one will stop Banshees. Fingers will be a flying.
Yeah, Everything Everywhere winning WGA has totally thrown my Oscar puzzle balance off, because I was really banking on original screenplay being where Banshees got something. But if that's going to Everything Everywhere now, because it won WGA, then I have it winning nothing. And then that's where I'm being pulled towards like, well, then do I have to say Carrie Condon instead of Jamie Lee Curtis?
Right.
And then there's just like the domino effect where I'm just like, everything's ruined.
Right. Again, this is much more stressful for you than it is for me. And I'm not taking glee in that. I'm just noting that I am being glib about these pieces moving. But you're absolutely right. Because, I was like, well, Banshees will win screenplay, and that's great. That's very well deserved. But if that's not going to happen, then, that is really interesting, because it also would not really be surprising if Angela Bassett won. Like, I know she's sort of faded, but like, it's Angela Bassett. Like,
yep.
Of course. And she is great in that movie, even if the movie is faded, like Angela Bassett has not. So like, that would be absolutely fine. I would, what do I want to say about adapted screenplay? I do hope it's women talking, even though, again, I've not seen that one. Very unnerved as a man coming on this show, of all the movies with women in the title, or woman, that I've not seen. But I don't feel great about my choices leading up to that.
At least you said women talking and not women are talking, like Mark Wahlberg did.
Correct. There's other things that I have not done that Mark Wahlberg has done that I'm glad I can say. It'll be interesting if All Quiet does take that, because that is like a real kind of push for it. And I mean, maybe now is the time, very briefly, again, the Jamel Bowie Letterboxd review was that like what the movie added in, which I think is, worked in the movie, and you did reference it earlier, and I've thought about it as well, which is the sort of like, here are the sort of mucky muck government generals and leaders who are, negotiating this, and they're on the fancy train, and all this like nice stuff's happening. That's not in the book, like, which I don't remember, because I think I didn't read that book, even though I don't believe it was ever assigned to me. I remember we read Oliver Twist in my English class when the other classes were reading All Quiet on the Western Front. I don't think I was assigned it and didn't do it. I just think I was never assigned it and then didn't read it on my own. But I have confidence this is correct, because I've seen it in multiple places, that the leadership thing is not in the book. And instead, what's in the book that's not in the movie is the soldiers get to go on leave and go home and have to interact with like the people back home, and they're all like, war's going great, like, you're doing great, you're a hero, blah blah blah, and they are like,
I remember that,
and you don't know, blah blah blah. And so Bowie's argument was that that's the heart of the book. The book isn't war is bad or that war is hell. The book is that this like dynamic in society of people who leave to go and fight, like, empties out their soul, and also allows for people at home to live in this fake reality that like everything is like good and noble and going fine. And so it's interesting that like the movie's very effective. People really like it. There is an argument that like it does sort of rip out the like part of the heart of the message, which is maybe a bad thing for an adaptation to do. But that also is potentially just people's perspective on what is the important part of the book. Because showing, there's a reason that a movie about a land war in Europe is resonating so hardly with people right now. That like, oh, like, this is very bad, we shouldn't be back here doing this.
I'll bet, though, that more voters just know that it is an adaptation.
Right.
Rather than what the nuances of that adaptation are, like you're saying.
But I think that's what leans me towards like also like Sarah Polley. I would love her to win an Oscar. So like I'm pulling for women talking. That's how I talk myself into that corner. But I assume All Quiet will win because that's the movie with momentum, and it does a good job getting that story across in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, I'm going to be going back and forth on the screenplay categories.
I can see that
up until Sunday. I think. So we'll see where I land. All right. Well, this was amazing.
It was. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to have been included in this inaugural or potentially concluding a foray into the long take podcasting.
Can people find you anywhere?
They're welcome
can we?
It's PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF, on Instagram. I never post, but if you wanted to send me a message, I would look at it and probably reply. My Twitter isn't deactivated, but I don't ever log in anymore, so I wouldn't try me there. Instagram's probably the best place. I'm on like Mastodon servers and like Hive, but I don't actually do.
And you're on Letterboxd, it sounds like.
I'm on Letterboxd. I don't do anything on Letterboxd. I read things on there. So yes, you won't get a lot of information about me, but you could contact me, PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF, on Letterboxd as well. And thank you so much for having me, Jen. This was awesome.
Thank you for joining me. Yes, this was great. I can't wait to do it again next year.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you for listening. You can follow The Long Take on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive reviews of films with Oscar buzz, as well as new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.